visit our website, www.thecable.net. It's also nice to know you can pay your bills at a distance, online at all commercial banks, or at www.thecable.net/pay. Now's the time to try online banking. It's ultra easy. Call us at 465-2588, 662-7742, or 763-0184. The Cable. We're here for you.
Maybe it's the way the brilliant gold liquid reflects our sunshine, or how the bright blue of its label mirrors the clear Caribbean skies overhead. Maybe it's the fresh, crisp taste of this beastly cold beer on a scorching hot day. Maybe it's even the way it brings us all together. But one thing is for sure, Carib is very much a part of who we are wherever we're from in the Caribbean. Carib. It's the way we play. Drink responsibly.
Good afternoon to all. You are listening to the second half of Inside the News on Win FM. My name is Garth Wilkin and I'm your host for today's program. The Win FM family is pleased to have in studio today the Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris, Minister of Health and Agriculture, the Honorable Eugene Hamilton, and Mrs. Michele de la Coudray Blake, the Director of the Counseling Department in the Ministry of Social Services. Good afternoon, Ministers and Mr. Blake. Mrs. Blake.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you guys and to all the listeners.
Yes.
The theme for today's program is mitigating the economic and socio-psychological impacts of COVID-19. And that is what guided our discussions this morning. Before the break, I put a question to the panelists, to each of them, in relation to creating a healthier nation moving forward as one of the positives in our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The questions were generally, what programs can we actually implement to market to the people and convince them that we should be a healthier nation so that we can become less vulnerable to viruses and diseases generally, and this type of pandemic, if it were to ever show its face again. To Minister Hamilton, I was asking, do you believe that the Ministry of Health, in collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture, should implement an Eat Better, Eat Local campaign or something similar to promote healthy lifestyles, which can then work in alignment with what the Minister has promoted as Eat Local, Buy from the Local Fishermen and Women campaign? And Prime Minister, it's taxing anything is an unpopular decision. But sometimes we have to look at the benefit of the society as a whole rather than the few who might complain. Is the government willing to take such an unpopular step to, for example, tax sugary foods or other unhealthy foods? I mean, I might be personally offended because no one loves a $2 bread and tin cheese more than me. But if the tin cheese now is double in price, Prime Minister, I might have to pass on that. And, I think as a people we have to reflect and think and take these opportunities, I should say, to reset and look at what is important. And I think over the last couple months, we've realized how important our health is. I mean, there are very little people who have not, at least indirectly, known of someone who has either contracted the virus or has died. And I think when these events happen, we really need to click a reset button in our heads and start to think, what can we do to be better on the other end of this? And I think that this public health issue should be high on the agenda. And to Mrs. Blake, mental health goes directly in line with physical health. And what do you recommend can be implemented as a public policy or program to ensure that there's not an increase, because there are going to be people that are going to be depressed. There are people whose mental health is going to suffer because of this. And what can we do to help those people from a practical standpoint? I would love to get your input. Honorable Prime Minister, I know in your usual addresses and meetings at Government House, you typically want a lot of questions and then you start to answer. I don't know if you want us to approach this afternoon that way. I'm giving you the leeway to decide that.
I am actually in your hands. It will be refreshing to hear from the callers. So if they are ready, we can, of course, go.
Yes.
And I could quickly, though, if you will, speak to the issue of the health and the food matter that you raised. And my quick response to this is that as a region, we suffer long and daily with respect to non-communicable diseases. And much of this can be prevented by proactive action on the individual's part. Lifestyle is at the heart of many of the non-communicable diseases. That is what we eat, what we drink, what we do. We engage in risky behaviors, etc., etc. Those things, though, the power lies in us. The power lies in us to be able to rectify them. There has long been the contention what is important, and we say the health of the nation is the wealth of the nation. So for us, it is not a zero-sum game. A functioning society needs a strong economy, and a strong economy needs healthy, productive people to support it, to maintain it. And of course, only a healthy economy in the end could be able to respond to the health challenges and keep, as it were, modernizing the health sector. That is why, because we had had a good track record of fiscal management, having paid off the IMF debt, we were able to date to have committed over $25 million extra to a health budget, which was significantly around $70 million. So we are going towards $90+ million if all other things were to remain the same with respect to the health sector. The matter of the local food in this COVID fight, one of the prescriptions is that we boost our immune system, improve upon our intake in particular of vitamin C. Of course, the sleeping and all of those things are good. In this COVID fight, there's a specific prohibition in that the liquor license have been repealed. And part of the reason for that is to ensure that people do not engage in risky behaviors as a consequence of the consumption of alcohol. So we are seeing how all these parts get together. One of our disappointments is that as a country, we are not producing enough fruits and vegetables for a sufficient long period of time during the year. So we need people to get back into orchard development, into mangoes and guavas and limes and all of those things, and to have them for a significant period of the year. And that will call for technology being involved rather than the traditional methods of farming. The principal question as it relates to alcohol has been answered in part, and of course tobacco. The CARICOM had set itself as a health priority to increase taxes on those two as a way of reducing consumption. At least 2 countries had gone that part. One, I think, was Dominica. The other could have been Grenada, and Barbados was contemplating. What we had said, those were going to be the models. We would look at the studies of the results to see whether that had led to any significant reduction in the consumption of alcohol or cigarettes. And certainly if that is what is required, we are prepared to go that way. Difficult as it has been, because we have been a government so far that has not introduced one single new tax, and in fact has been reducing them. But because I have said consistently that the health of the nation is our priority, we will do all that it takes to get our people there, add in not just fiscal measures, but a more vigorous public education program.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And Garth, your question borders on, and I could capture it in one word, prevention. And the father of modern medicine, Hippocrates, some 2,500 years ago, did make the statement, he has written more than 70 books, and he's considered to be the father for that reason, especially the fact that he has saved Athens from a plague. And he's well noted for his work in medicine. He said that all diseases start in the gut. And over time, we realized that not while completely true, because I suppose you can say this particular disease did not start in the gut. Of course, the metabolic diseases do start in the gut. And so he's right for that on that particular point. And I want to add that because of that, we have to pay attention to what we put in our guts. The word gut and gutless go together, right? So when you're gutless, you have to be careful what it is doing to do harm to your body. So because you are supposed to protect the gut, where most of those bacteria live that take care of this body of yours, fight to keep you alive, we should not be doing things to do damage to our bacteria in our gut. And we do it every day. We do it every day, some carelessly, some deliberately. And we do it every day. And so your question about prevention is a good one. And what I will say is this. The Ministry of Agriculture has been every year promoting an Eat Local event. In fact, we have an entire day dedicated to eating local. And we serve lunches on that day, all local produce. Every year that is done in St. Kitts and Nevis. Maybe more now. This pandemic teaches us that we have to do a greater focus on other things. But true, we do that in collaboration with all of the ministries. Ministry of Tourism, even we have what you call the restaurant day. We do a lot of that kind of promotion. But you're right. We eat all of these things. We are becoming so obese. In our schools today, there's a prevalence of about 40% obesity. That is a frightening number, because we know that because of obesity, we can have all of these chronic diseases coming down in our society. And certainly, the cost of treating chronic diseases is astronomical. It could bankrupt a family. It could bankrupt a country. And so we have to begin to educate our youth. The ministers of government sometimes take children out for lunch. Somewhere around November, I think it is. And sometimes you look at what they order, and you recognize that there needs to be an education of children into what really to eat, because we are contributing to the obesity, diabetes that flows from that, the hypertension, the blood pressure, the kidney disease. And talking about kidney disease, God, we 3 years ago when I went to Taiwan, we set up with the Taiwan's Veterans General a program which is to train our nurses, train our doctors here and in Taiwan. A program lasting 3 years, teaching them how to identify persons at the point of service at the health centers, how to identify persons who are at risk for kidney diseases, kidney failure. Because we recognize over 100 persons are now so affected. There was at one point only 1 or 2 persons used to be having kidney problems. Now we have over 100. You know what happened to people like Eli Matt, sorry to call his name, but he had to look services abroad. And so we have set up that in this country in the last 3-4 years, where we can now identify those who are at risk and chart a course, a program of what they should be eating to be able to divert from becoming chronically ill with this kidney disease. We have also put equipment, machines, additional machines at the hospital to do the dialysis so that we can help those who are already at that point. But primarily it comes from the food, what we're eating. And the more we pay attention to what we eat, the greater will be the chances of us to be able to fight off this disease. There's a chap by the name of Dr. Arod, I forget his name. Anyway, the name will come back to me. He has indicated that there are at least 3 vitamins that we should be paying close attention and really intaking to be able to help fight off this particular COVID. He's an MIT graduate, a PhD from MIT. So I read, listened to him too. Vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin C. All we have those same vitamins in the food we grow. They are in the food we grow. They are in the eggs, in the mango, the kale, the squash, the greens, the carrots. And we are growing them here. And you know what is good, Garth? We have an institution in agriculture that tests the quality of the soil in which we plant. We gather the information about where to plant, where it's best to plant a particular crop. It is available. And so that we do the testing of the soil to inform farmers not to over-medicate their products. And when the food is grown, we also test it. And we have a 99% good quality, better sometimes than the food that we import from overseas. And so all our hotels and restaurants should be buying the local food to help to improve the health of the people who are in St. Kitts and Nevis. And of course, the vitamin D, all you have to do is go in the sun. Because you're here, you must stay in your home, don't mean you mustn't go out in your yard. Vitamin D is from the sun. Just go in your yard, even if you have to lie down on a cot. You know, of course, you do a little walk around, make it a little better, of course. And then, of course, I suggested planting a tree. Oranges are great, grapefruit are great, sweet peppers, you have broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, tomatoes, cauliflower, cantaloupe. Those things help you with your vitamin C. Of course, you could go to the pharmacy and get some vitamin C too. But the point is, you have the local foods which have those things in it, and all we have to do is to consume. And I'm not saying to overeat. I'm not saying to be the gutless. And you remember I mentioned gut a while ago. I'm just saying, just eat what is local, help to boost your immune system, and it will help to fight the COVID disease. And so I appreciate the opportunity to strengthen those who are planting food. And in addition to that, in your own home, if you plant a tree around your yard, providing guavas, as the Prime Minister mentioned, providing some of those things with vitamin C, you are also contributing to your own health. Don't think you should eat all macaroni. Nothing against macaroni, my friends, but I'm just saying, use the food that gives you the vitamins that you need. Okay? Thank you.
Okay. Garth, I am so glad you asked that question, because we've been long talking about the connection between physical health and psychological health. So this is a perfect question. When you were calling out the points, when you were indicating about I think you said there was some research and you were calling out some of the points. And the last thing you said was that crisis brings opportunity. So we in mental health see this as an excellent opportunity, because for the longest while we've been trying to destigmatize mental health and talk about it not as an entity separate and apart from physical health, but something that needs to be incorporated. And so this crisis is bringing about the opportunity for us to have that discussion. When I started talking earlier, I talked about the fact that all of us in this situation are being impacted by it, emotionally, psychologically. So the fact that something is happening in this world that is affecting all of us means that it ought to help us to recognize that this is not a them versus us kind of situation. It is all of us. And since it is all of us, this is the perfect time to incorporate the discussion of mental health into health, period. And so we think that this is the perfect opportunity for this. So in terms of going forward and what we want to see happen, I think we in St. Kitts are starting to build some really good structures about the education of our health. The minister talked about some of the things. You see people on the road exercising and walking. People pay attention to what's going on with their bodies. People are starting to appreciate the importance of what they put in their bodies. So we are starting to have that awareness. We're starting to talk with our children about it in school. The very little ones in school, they're starting to encourage them to talk about fruits and vegetables. And so I remember one time being in a forum where they were trying to figure out how to get little children to focus more on fruits and vegetables, and encouraging them when they go to the supermarket to tell mommy they want this versus, fruit versus chips or something like that. So the point is, we are starting to do what we need to do to have that conversation. We think this is an excellent time at the start of this to incorporate mental health. So we just look at it as health overall. We have things like I think in Ministry of Health they have like a food pyramid. I think it's important for us to have a mental health pyramid there alongside it, so that you start to have the messages of incorporation. So just in terms of going forward, I'm just going to put just put one concept, and that is we are at an important point and an opportune point to be able to incorporate a message of health overall, including mental health. When we talk to people about what's going on with them, I mean, sometimes you have situations where people are dealing with extreme stress and depression and so forth, and sometimes people don't pick it up, they don't pinpoint it. They come to us when the doctors send them, and the doctors send them because their body is manifesting something. So there is that physical manifestation in the body when something is going on emotionally. Likewise, when we talk to people about how to manage their mental health, we talk to them about getting enough sleep, eating, and exercising. I hear that being discussed here all the time. So we incorporate that into their mental health management. So the point is that there is that connection, and we are at the point where we could have that collaborative discussion. Just in terms of something you asked also about what's going on. All the research indicates that long-term mental health impact from this is going to be there. It's going to be felt for a while. Increase in depression, anxiety, stress, those kinds of things. So we anticipate that for a while there are going to be more presentations of this. It means then that we have to have a response that is adequate to be able to address these needs. One of the things that has presented itself as a result of this happening is that there has been the opportunity for extensive training that has been offered, and people are taking advantage of it. There is something in mental health system called first aid, psychological first aid. The thing here is that there's a recognition that everybody doesn't need the same level of care or the same intervention of care. It's just, for example, like if you have a severe illness, if you have pneumonia, for example, you may have to go to your doctor. But if you have the sniffles, you could take care of it at home with some home remedies, get something basic to take care of it. So too in mental health, there is a spectrum of interventions that people could utilize. And at the very basic level, there is just a simple connection of people meeting people on an emotional level and just sort of validating some of the things that they're experiencing and helping them to get to the next step. So psychological first aid allows for people who don't necessarily have an extensive mental health background to be able to help people through a difficult time. What is happening is that as a result of this, organizations like PAHO, WHO, CARPHA are offering things online where persons could get trained in psychological first aid. It means then that we are going to have more of a varied cadre of people to be able to meet the different needs that are going to come up. And so that is one of the things that we see happening. That's one of the benefits that is coming out of this, one of the opportunities that is coming out of this. So just in terms of, sort of packaging it, what I'm saying is that it's a perfect opportunity for us to be able to incorporate the language and discussion of mental health into an overall health perspective. And what I'm also saying is that we are in the midst of being able to utilize some of the resources that we have so that we have more people to be able to meet the needs that that we anticipate in the future.
Yes, the assumption is that all of these programs and any changes we implement, it comes down to whether we have the dollars and cents to push behind them.
Right.
And just as a transition, and 2018 online, I note that At the end of 2015, the government of St. Kitts and Nevis had an accumulated cash balance of $593 million, EC dollars, consisting of deposits at local banks, deposits at the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, and fixed deposits of various lengths and interest rates. At the end of 2016, the accumulated cash balance was $681 million. At the end of 2017, it was $702 million. And at the end of 2018, it was $673 million. As Minister of Finance, can you tell us what is the unaudited cash balance at the end of 2019 and what is it now? And has the government, by way of the cabinet, determined how much it is willing to spend of our cash, and I say our cash because the country's cash is our cash, to prevent economic collapse by, one, ensuring working people continue to receive paychecks to purchase medication, pay their rents, car loans, mortgages, and student loans, etc., and two, by otherwise stimulating the economy. This may seem like a technical question, but I think it's important that we know if the decision has been made, what that decision is, and if it's being discussed, what are the considerations as to how much of our reserves do we use as a response, an economic response to the pandemic. And I also want to get the panelists' views because this is an apt question. I was listening to Bernie Sanders on television, and he had suggested that it's cheaper to prevent an economic collapse than to repair the economy after the collapse. Hence the urgent need for a comprehensive stimulus package, which the government has offered in its first stage thus far, but not only for the benefit of laid-off workers or persons who have lost their income, but also for financially feasible small businesses to stay alive. The argument was that we can spend less now to prevent a total collapse, and we would have to spend too much later down if all the small businesses were to break down and people would lose all of their income. And also in relation to that, there have been some questions about in the stimulus package about the allocation of the $30 million from mortgages from the development bank, and what was the reasoning behind that part of the package as opposed to using some or all of that money to prioritize supplementing income for those persons that lost their wages rather than giving mortgages, because in the uncertain times ahead, there's going to be less people who are going to be seeking to build homes, more people who are going to be focused on just being able to feed their families. So I just wanted your views on that.
Well, there are several questions, and the truth is the response to the pandemic, we have already said, has to be an all-of-society approach. The government cannot be the chief, as it were, entity to bail out entities. It will not happen, it cannot happen, and it will not happen anywhere. The reality is that even the government flows have reduced significantly as a consequence of some of the very stimulus measures we have proposed. For example, the reduction of the tax by 50% on unincorporated entities, the reduction of the tax by over 33% or thereabout with respect to corporate entities, the foregoing of water payments, inflows, electricity inflows, all of them are substantial. The reduction and removal of VAT from a number of items that had become critical in the context of the fight for COVID. So the government has done as far as it can go, having regard to its resources and commitments at this particular moment in time. And truth, it is only a month, and so we have to really look to see how those measures would sink in. Even without confirming, because I don't have them to reach, the sums that you have outlined, it is important to understand what constitutes the government, as it were, accounts. in the government accounts are substantial sums, hundreds of thousands of dollars in the sums that you would have called out, which belongs to those who have invested in treasury bills, and therefore they can be called upon at any time with substantial consequences. So certainly in our planning and management, while that is something that is there and for which the government pays an interest, we know that that is funds available on demand, and we treat it that way. Because anyone with a treasury bill may choose at a particular point, and although they are time bound, if someone comes and says, I want to get back my treasury bill, especially at a time like this, you have to be able to respond. And a substantial portion of those so-called reserves are funds that are characterized in that particular way. The government also has investments that are part of its portfolio. Some of them are short-term, some of them are long-term. And therefore, one has to also factor in the consequences of breaking any of those commitments that you may have. What would be the loss at this particular moment in time? And so it is a complex matter that has to constantly be under review. When we started, for example, to build out the largest stimulus package per capita anywhere in the region, we did not contemplate at the time that we would have to invest now somewhat $203,000 to bring home students from Jamaica, but that has now come to the fore. We did not contemplate that we will have to spend as much as $20+ million to get the healthcare system in a position that if the worst cases were to come, we would be in the best possible place to be able to tackle them. So as we respond to this particular pandemic, there are things seen and unknown which will come on board from time to time, and the government always must retain the flexibility to be able to respond. And equally at this time, the government stand alone as the only major employer that is carrying 100% of its employee, even while they are at home, and we have set that high target for ourselves. The government bill is over $180 million in wages, allowances, people with their pensions and all of that. So what at first glance may look like a lot, in the context of the reality, and by keeping on these people, we are keeping the economy, we are afloat, we are giving them purchasing power. And our wages are significant, 180 million thereabouts. Even before you receive one tax dollar, you know for that particular year that you have to go. The government resources certainly will be used in those targeted areas at this particular moment in time where the government thinks we will have greatest advantage. And some of them are projects that we can now shave. For example, we can't let the island resurfacing stay as it is at this particular juncture. You're setting the stage for accidents and other issues. So at the critical areas, those particular projects are going to have to continue. And so the government has its own commitments which the government must make. The government has been generous. And when we begin to evaluate what this government has done, recognize we do not live in utopia, and we do not live in a world where we are alone. In Trinidad and Tobago, with additional resources because it is oil-rich, the finance minister and the government has made it clear they will not defer one tax. They can't afford to, they claim, because they say at this time when we are spending more, at this time when they are losing revenues, all governments are, and perhaps most entities, perhaps except for supermarkets and other service providers, are losing money. How do you expect us to be deferring our taxes? That is what Colm Albert asked just 2 weeks ago. That is the record. When you look at what St. Kitts and Nevis has done, you marvel at the situation just 15 minutes away from us in Antigua, where the government is saying we will not be able to pay our salaries because our intake of taxes is now little or none. Those are the realities that must bedevil the government and be our first consideration at this particular moment in time. And by attempting to hold our employees, give them their due, ensuring that they can participate in economic life, we are doing what is prudent and necessary at this particular moment in time. Next door in St. Lucia, not too far away, the government has already taken up a position that, listen, we will not pay our wages in cash. We are going to do an IOU sort of arrangement where you will get your some in cash and some by way of a bond or some other instrument of debt from the government. Those are the realities that are so close around us. We marvel at the fact that we have been able to manage to put something aside, the thrift which the minister mentioned, for the rainy day. And if we become callous, if we begin to think that we have a lot, we will find ourselves unable. We don't have the luxury of a President Trump and his administration to be able to just print dollars. In fact, for us to do anything in terms of a monetary policy response, you have to have consensus among the leadership of some 8 entities, and that is not going to come very easy. So all of us, whatever we have to be used it in a guarded way, and that is the approach in which we have done. In terms of our investment follow well-accepted pattern in terms of participation and in terms of entities being able to work in accordance with what the government intended to do. We chose Development Bank because it is in fact part of the public sector response to economic activity in the country. It is Development Bank who is the largest supplier of, for example, financing for our students to go abroad. Largest supplier for all the years of its existence. And it is the entity best willing and able to provide support to the small businesses. They get it there easy. And so that has become an instrument for the government to control its policy. When, for example, in the past, government attempted to do certain initiatives and say, we want this rate applied. Other entities exercise their prerogative and say, well, we can't offer it that rate, or we have to get back this in a return, etc. We were able to get better compliance and congruence with policy in terms of the Development Bank. And let's be clear that those policies had been put and noted in the budget since last year. So it's not that just now we are just doing them. We said we were going to do them. We said that was the mechanism. Nobody else came and said, we want to participate. Indeed, up to now, none has come because they are not prepared to basically do the kind of term sheet that others are prepared to do. And so we just follow through in the context our efforts to bail out. Not bail out, to assist in providing a stimulus. Our stimulus has been the most comprehensive anywhere in the region. And I think that tells us that we have given it good thought. We have put something that is doable, something that we think is proportionate to the response that is needed at this particular moment in time. To be clear, entities who have been affected are benefited from this, and other entities are also going to benefit from this. We will see how this pans out in another 2 or 3 months, but clearly this is not a government that goes just throwing away money. Even as we are speaking now, just last week, the government took the decision that we will provide a hot meal for over 4,000 students in our primary school. When we first talk about stimulus package, that wasn't part of it. You can't capture everything in the context of an emergency. But we have to be sufficiently guarded and sufficiently resourced to be able to respond to these imperatives without putting the government back in a hole, back up to its throat in debt, where we become the pariah nation and have to go to the IMF again. We will never go back to the IMF under the circumstances in which we went before. So that is why we have to be careful and we are carefully looking at it. Up to Friday, just yesterday, I spent over 3 hours with the financial team attempting to look at certain realities. What more can we do? What will we do? Our financial team met probably Tuesday or thereabout with the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, as we have been meeting with several other players, because several of them have said to us, the Chamber don't represent us. You're all talking to the Chamber, come talk to us. We are in a different category. They don't represent us. They don't speak for us. But we recognize the importance of all the associations, and we try to make ourselves available for those who feel that they are excluded or not a part of that, and to hear their voice. And in the context of that, at the appropriate time, we will come back again. But we just, less than a month ago, outlined a stimulus package, some of which we have just started to see implemented, because the very implementation had been put on hold or delayed as a consequence of the lockdowns, where people couldn't function well and only some could participate at home. So my advice is to say, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see what can happen and what is the reality. The other point to make in this context, again, as we look at monies, every other entity, the government becomes contingently liable for them. So we have to be careful. So when we look at the government, we have to look, wow, what is the state of the other government entities? What is the state of Skelec? What is the state of SCASPA? What is the state of every other entity? Because ultimately, that burden becomes a government burden. And that is why we have to be guarded, and we have been so conscious and so careful with the fiscal management of the country. We understand we need to intervene. We have intervened. We gave the largest per capita stimulus package anywhere in the region. When we were paying people $1,000 at wage support, St. Vincent was giving them an average of $300, $75 a week. Trinidad and Tobago Oil Rich was giving them $603, and so on and so on. So we are ahead of most of them with respect to these. We are paying for students to come. Antigua, who control that, is saying we will facilitate the vehicle, but other people will have to organize. And we would want, just as the government, the first response, and I think this in part the follow-through of the point from Eugene, that has to come in the context of an emergency. We have to look to our own resources. And that is why, however small, we have to begin to put something aside rather than looking for somebody else to intervene. The truth is, with this pandemic, you have little or no grant fund coming in. You have offers of loan financing, but those then have to be repaid. And we have yet as a government determined, based on the financial advice, we will not yet go to take any loans from anybody at this time, because we don't want to get back in the debt trap, because those have to be paid. So we are to, perhaps through our fiscal management, we're at the best place to be able to respond. We want to keep it that way. United States of America is not offering any significant aid to anybody. They have their own troubles. So we have to look within to ourselves. So I've said, give the process time, and as we did, we will come again at an appropriate time to say, having reviewed, because we can't yet make a determination how successful those interventions are with the limited time frame in which they have been operating. What we do know, they have satisfied the requirement of helping the vast majority of people to be able to keep their head above water, to get their food, and to get other things which they need, their medication. And equally, that is why we make the appeal to the landlords. Everyone must show sensitivity. Yeah. You can't come as a businessman and say, well, government eats upon the tax, but what are you eating upon? Mm-hmm. Are you eating upon the profit margin you're charging the people for your goods and services, or you're carrying them up in a time of pandemic? It is a shared responsibility to take the country forward. And we are having important consultation with all the actors and making determinations as we go ahead. Because while we have the long picture, things are changing every day. New circumstances are coming, and we have had to give ourselves the flexibility, just as we did with the students, just as we did when we did the budget in 2020. There were no plans to spend to get 2,000 now devices for online learning. We have had now to put that in the context of the closure of schools. So there's a lot that has happened even since the stimulus, and which will continue to happen. And we have to exercise the fiscal prudence that has taken us so far. So I'm happy that that question has come. And as we go forward, more discussions will have about that. But we are going to be faithful and prudent stewards of the public coffers as we have done in the past.
So just to understand clearly, Prime Minister, you are promising the nation, when you're asking them to be thrifty and to tighten their belts, that the government is equally promising that it will be thrifty and will tighten its belts.
Yes, okay. Yes, and we have led by example, and that is why we have been able to respond. Some countries in the Caribbean now, and I don't want to name anybody, lest anybody be ashamed, but you do the research, they haven't even announced a stimulus because there's none to give. And it goes back to what Granny would say, you can't make blood out of stone. There's none to give. So those people are on their own, attempting to fight a good fight. And we hope that they will succeed in the fight. The government will tighten its belt. The government will not be foolhardy. The government will not deliberately get itself into deficit spending, because at some point it catches up with you, as it did with us in 2011. And what was the consequences? 3 years, no increments. 85% increase in electricity up to now. Some business haven't paid off that debt and will never be able to do. Water went up 600%. We had haircut at the bank, haircut at the churches, haircut at the credit union, and some institution never recover from that. Just 2 days ago, to my surprise, a gentleman called me from Anguilla. And he said, we are now looking because, things are tight, Mr. Prime Minister. Somebody gave me your number. But the former government had owed us some money, millions of dollars, and we haven't gotten it back from our investment. We wonder if there's something that you can do. I said, I'm sorry, sir, but that wasn't even part of our contemplation. What you need to do is to write to the financial secretary, and she will give appropriate advice. So even at this time, all things that have happened, people are now bringing them back now as new grievance, that a debt was a debt is a debt is a debt. And so these are challenges that we face, and we want to be circumspect, and we want to do the right thing for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, as we have done over the last 5 years. What I promise as we go through, as we get further analysis, we are meeting, I think it's Tuesday, as the heads of government level, to share experiences and to look at a number of solutions, number of challenges relating to security, relating to food security, relating to the health sector, relating to coordination with respect to the international financial institution, to see if we could exact more. One of the things the CARICOM leadership is saying, we are the most indebted region, and we can't, or they don't want to. We may eventually be forced to. We don't want to take on more debt. So when Citi comes and says, I will give you a debt, but I will reduce the interest rate, it is difficult to contemplate. And that is why we ensure that we kept certain things there. There are a lot of projects we could have done, but had we done them today, the conversation would have been different. Today, we would have had no ventilators in our hospitals. Thank God, we have over 6 times more ventilators at JNF than we had before. At Mary Charles, where there was none, we now have. We have increased the stock at Alexander Hospital. All of that we are only able to do because we did not take our eyes off the ball, and we certainly will not. And that is why we have been targeted in terms of the intervention. The poor man will feel the hardest, as he always does, and the poor woman. So we have a response to that. Even while we look at the wage support, there's the PAP program, which thankfully we had introduced maybe 1 year ago, December 2018, or thereabout, which has now come in already. 500 odd applicants have come in, additional to the 4,000 or thereabout that we had before. So we have some support structures. Thankfully, we had a number of entities that are doing the feeding of some of the impoverished people in our country. And we say thank you to them, and we want to continue programs such as those. Our stimulus package to agriculture, again, is to enhance food security and make food available at a cheaper price. So at least we may not have the luxury, but we should be able to eat, and eat something that satisfies our nutritional requirements for safe food. And that is why the government is taking these particular measures, and we will continue to do them. We understand the pride must be given to people again to begin to re-engage. That is why the construction programs are going to continue. And a substantial portion of the people anyway who would become involved with them are persons whose wage is guaranteed. One of the things people say about government, it may not pay big like those private sector firms, but the pay is stable and guaranteed. So those persons would have a better sense of stability and be able to engage. In any event, funds that there can always be redistributed by agreement. So if there's a slack there, we move it in other areas. We have already put aside some for small enterprises. But in this context, again, you have to be so selective as to what enterprises. The point Michele was making about time for big decision, and we're looking where you're at. If, for example, I wanted, given the growth of the tourism industry, to invest in rentals at a time when no tourist is there, is it the appropriate time? So even for the bank with its customers, there has to be a re-educating and as it were, rethinking of priorities for engagement and training people in order to pursue those.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. We have a couple of calls, so we're going to go to the phone lines in a second. So I encourage the callers to call in. I'll give you the numbers shortly. But Prime Minister, while we're taking the calls, I just wanted to put a couple more questions to you so that when the calls come in, then we can take the questions and then answer them after. In terms of CBI, I noted from the 2018 accounts that the CBI income was 44% of the government's overall income in 2018. That is quite significant. So my questions in regard to that are, has the CBI team provided an impact assessment to Cabinet yet in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic? And I see that Grenada is actively promoting their program still. What is the plan, or our plan, to keep the CBI program alive given the global economic crisis that is looming? In terms of tourism, in your interview, and I think it was Sky News, you had told the journalist that there are plans in place for a new brand of tourism product. I just wanted to follow up on your statement and ask if that plan do you have any drafts of that plan? Can you share any of those plans with us so that we can have an understanding, because tourism is a very important industry in our country. And would you consider setting up a special bipartisan tourism advisory committee, including tourism business leaders and the former ministers of tourism who are alive, to chart a path forward? I personally feel that having Michael Powell, Dwight Astafan, Ricky Skerritt, and Lindsey Grant in one room could result in a premium plan. I mean, country above self being our motto. So I just wanted to have your thoughts on that. And then, with that said, let's go to the phone lines and hear the questions from the callers.
Hello.
Caller, you on the air?
Good day, lady and gentlemen. A question for us about the psychological effect and the fallout from the virus. Even before the virus, there were concerns about social distancing in another form. I think technology allowed for communication without physical contact. Are you at all concerned that the virus has exacerbated those concerns? And is it that we will have to permanently adjust to the new realities? And a comment. When a leader repeatedly exaggerates and engages in superlatives, when he stretches the truth.
Caller. Sorry, caller.
Yes.
I'm not Mr. Bacchus.
Okay.
We are trying to focus on some positives.
And I'll finish. That's
Yes,
all.
you can save that for the other programs, but in a program that I control, I want to hear questions. I don't want to see anybody attacking anyone. Let us be mature.
This is not an attack. I haven't attacked anyone.
I have taken it as the moderator as an attack, and it can that question or your comment can be taken somewhere else. We want to focus on the actual topic today, and I don't mean to be rude. I think you have very good insight every time that I've been on the program, and your question was a very pertinent question. So it's not a rude interruption. I just want to keep the focus so that we can move forward in a bipartisan manner today. Okay? So thank you very much for your question, and we'll stay on the line for an answer to your question.
Could we take a number of callers?
Yes, that's what we're going to do, Prime Minister. Caller, you're on the air?
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, this is Mr. Nipper. Let me ask you a question. I got a call from a young man this morning from the country, from Herefordshire, and he's trying to figure out what's going to happen due to the pandemic, how he's going to be able to pay his mortgage. So is there any programs in place? And when are they going to get the PAP and the Social Security? How long are they going to get that?
Okay, thank you, caller. Caller, you on the air?
Yeah. Win FM?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Caller, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay, can you put your question, please?
Good afternoon, Prime Minister.
Good afternoon, sir. You're on the air.
And everybody on the panel.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah. Two heads is better than one. And I like how you and Sean is an accountant and nothing could go wrong. But you see, I said this to say that. So security is a thing when sugar industry used to go. People used to work for small money, 135, 140, and we money used to go down there. And people who were self-employed never want to put no money down there, and some of them used to get more money in their pocket. And why sugar cane people got? Because when we work 7 to 4, from 7 to 12, we used to get 135, 140. If you want extra money, we got to take extra cane field, extra work, extra grass to dig, and different things, Prime Minister. And I like how you're handling everything, and you're working day and night. I sure when you better, you can't sleep. You're studying how the country must run. Because I don't hear other countries talking about IMF, right? And I know you ain't going back to that. And if you got to stretch the money like a rubber band, I want you to stretch it. And if you got to cut costs. In the next 2 or 3 months coming, and you see things going on the drain, and you see things can't go no further, you know what to do. I know you know what to do. I mean, I got to call you. I know what to do. I could tell you what to do too. You understand?
Thank you.
So that's the problem about it. Don't nobody come down there who put the not know you Mr. Emery and everything on monitor social security. Because a lot of people, because you talk about surplus, they want to hold all kind of things and beg all kind of things and take all kind of things. You're the one that stress your career. Okay, all the best, Prime Minister.
Thank you
Okay,
much.
thank you, caller. We have another caller. Caller, you on the air?
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
This question is for the Minister of Agriculture. Congratulations regarding your projected plans to increase the farming industry in the Federation. However, what is your specific plan for reducing the monkey population simultaneously? That's my question.
Okay. Thank you, caller. Caller, you on the air?
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, ma'am. Yes, good afternoon to everybody. Good afternoon, Prime Minister. This is Granny.
Good afternoon, Granny.
First of all, I want to thank you very much for commending me on a job well done in the bus system. That job is doing underneath Honorable Patrick Leibert in Ministry of Transportation. Yes, he outlined there some package. I don't know who all on the panel. I heard you, I heard a lady, I heard Honorable Eugene Hamilton. So, yes, he underlined some packages that, yes, he have in store for the busman. Whatever it is, we will be grateful and thankful. Right? Now, listening on the radio station, people are speaking about voting. Soon time for election. I just want to tell people and ask a simple question. If one now think it was hit with a hurricane, would you want to have election? But let me let y'all know this. This is like a hurricane we never see before. This hurricane here blow off people who don't work house roof because they sit down every single day with a mental problem. How can they feed their family? How their family going to eat because they're going to get the next paycheck? So when y'all going out there and think about election, the boss, if you want, give me a paper, your whole panel sign it, to say that we want got election until next year, until this date, whenever election is supposed to be, cool, give me it and take it out.
Okay,
right?
Thank you,
Another
caller.
thing is,
Caller, we're trying to focus. Okay, go ahead.
Pardon?
No, sorry, I was saying we were trying to focus on the economic and
yes,
socio-psychological impacts of the COVID-19.
Okay then, yes, I get into the food part now, right? We are in the world. You ever hear anybody say, children gonna be home under this COVID-19 and getting school meals? Nowhere, right? I give you a plus for that. Okay. Because right now, it eases the pressure off of families knowing that they have to cook extra food for their children then because their children them home. Within the fishing and the agriculture sector, I went up the agriculture, I think was Tuesday. Yes, they had some containers up there to buy some feed. The agriculture, them, it is good that it is now time for us to go back to we grow, to plant our own food. But you also have to remember, we ain't got much backyard. Right? No. Knowing that food is so cheap, the bag of food them for the animals them is so cheap. Right? I mean, it gives everybody now an extra hand to deal with their livestock. The gentleman who is here answering the phone, saying caller, he asked a question that I keep on asking all the time. At the end of this, but listening you know, at the end of this, after this pandemic, if the country reach a certain way, does the country have sufficient funds to bail out anyone? Well, you also answer that. Right? Which, I mean, you said it from 2011.
Caller, sorry to interrupt, but we have a few more calls and very little time. So, do you have any other questions for the panel?
Okay, do you think? I'm going to choose another night.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, then, you're welcome.
All right, and we lost that call. Prime Minister, I have received a few, and panelists, I've received a few questions online. So I just wanted to put them, and then everyone can deal with their particular questions. In terms of Minister Hamilton, a question was asked: if we do increase the fish supply, will the government be in a position to tax the foreign supply of fish so that the local fish is actually cheaper? The other question is for the Prime Minister. The question is, there was talk about massive haircuts that private citizens took some 10 years ago. Currently, there is a pause on the purchasing of treasury bonds. What are your thoughts on crowdfunding of capital projects with a modest return on investment by persons or businesses who indicate an appetite for investment in this economic downturn. This initiative would stem to not only curb the entitlement mentality, but will allow persons to be more invested in public infrastructure. I have another question or suggestion for Honorable Minister Hamilton. Would you be in a position to reintroduce a reconfigured SIMACO or similar entity for promoting food security by providing for an avenue for all farmers to systematically market to their consumers, notwithstanding that the institution may have failed to accomplish this before? If so, what would you have done differently? And one more question in terms of Prime Minister, your fellow Prime Minister Mia Mottley was on CNN the other day and spoke of CARICOM seeking funding and felt that it was unfair that certain international agencies only provide funding based on historical GDP data. And she was advocating on behalf of CARICOM that there be a vulnerability index to determine how international organizations provide aid. I know you spoke about that, you said that taking loans should be the last resort, but I'm sure we would be willing to take aid. I just wanted to know if St. Kitts was aligned with that CARICOM strategy of seeking aid based on our vulnerability. I think that extends to the fact that we are more so susceptible to hurricanes and other natural disasters, even though we might not be the poorest countries in the world. So I just wanted your input on that. And we will take one more question from the phone lines, and then we'll go to the answers. Caller, you're on the air. Good afternoon. Please turn on your radio.
Good afternoon. I don't have a radio. Let me see.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me good?
Yes, I was just hearing feedback. But we can hear you now.
Good. Good afternoon to the panel, and good afternoon to our leader of the Federation, Honorable Timothy Harris, Minister of Agriculture.
Good afternoon.
Honorable Hamilton. Hamilton, these questions are directed to you through Buckgatic Media. Now, the farmers are very happy that they can now attend to their farms, that they have now gone quiet, and that. Now, some challenges they are facing. I know before the COVID-19, there was a program rollout to control the monkey population. Now, in all good, we are saying that we are trying to boost agriculture in terms of farming and crops and as well as livestock, right? But I'm not sure how the plan is going, right, to keep the monkeys down, because we are really getting affected from the monkey, wild dogs, and other animals. I'm not sure if you have any answers to that question. Another thing, suppose we have a surplus of food on the island. What will become of the farmers? Because in an earlier program, some people spoke about and restaurants do not buy in big bulk. So we're wondering how would we be able to meet our market. I know there are some challenges with the WTO in terms of export. So I'm not sure what is in place at the agriculture heads in terms of helping farmers to get their crop to be sold. Those are some very important questions. They're asking about a time frame. I know in your earlier statement, you spoke about those persons whose cow has died through the sickness. And I'm very happy that the government have taken this serious and would assist the farmers. Maybe something that they can look into is maybe bringing in some new livestock and giving them out to the farmers. It may not be now, but maybe in the near future, that's something that we can look into.
Okay,
They
thank
had
you.
a program before where pigs was brought in because we wanted to have a good, strong breed of pork production in St. Kitts, right? So those are the questions that persons are asking. Honorable PM, the person said they're happy that the roundabout in Molyneux is being paved, and what they're suggesting that during lockdown, that these capital projects can continue because there's not much movement of traffic, so which means that the guys can work more faster and more comfortable during the lockdown in completing these capital projects.
Okay, thank you very much, caller. I have two more questions, and then we will leave it all to the panel to answer those numerous questions if we have enough time. The last two questions that I have are whether there was any plan for a short-term citizenship by investment program similar to the Hurricane Relief Fund, which be established to bring some quickly needed funds to our economy. And two, in terms of diversification, and I guess this more goes to the Minister of Agriculture, what is the status of our potential marijuana industry in the context that it may help with our revenues over the next few years? And with that said, I think there are loads of questions for each of the panelists to answer. I would like to start with Mrs. Blake, who I believe got the first question, and then we go to Minister Hamilton, and then we end with the Prime Minister.
Okay, great. Okay. So one of the callers asked about the psychological effect and, the social distancing and what the psychological effect is. We recognize that this is an unprecedented situation, and it is leading to unprecedented levels of stress. The longer it goes on, the more uncertainty there is around when there will be some sort of resolution and some sort of normalcy. So we recognize that there is going to be an impact on a person's psychological and mental health. One of the things that we recognize, because he talked about it in the context of social distancing, we are social beings, and I think this situation highlighted how much so we are social beings and how we take for granted our connectedness and interconnectedness. People connected through all kinds of environments, church, visiting with family and friends, and school and work. All of these were areas of social connectedness. And so all of a sudden, these are not there anymore. And I think people may have been surprised at how empty they feel as a result of being sort of, just pulled out of these situations. So the term social distancing is affecting us because it is these very same social environments that we go to for protection and for building up our resilience and for just feeling better. So I think one of the things is that there is a trend towards saying physical distancing instead of social distancing, because what this pandemic is doing is forcing us to be separate physically. But what it also is doing is encouraging creativity in how we could connect socially. So you're seeing situations where people are reaching out more, people are using virtual platforms to reach out, people are finding ways to connect, people are talking over the fence to their neighbors. So there is a psychological effect when people disconnect. What we're saying is this opportunity is bringing to the forefront the ability for people to connect socially through different media. So, that is my thing. I'm just basically saying that I agree, yes, there is an effect, but we are reconstructing what it means to be socially connected, and we are able to see some benefits there.
Thank you. I think I could look at three questions which may have been asked earlier. Plan for reducing the monkey population. We are currently, we've had a program for the last year or two where at least one person in particular had been doing significant trapping. We now have moved to where we have at least 14 or 15 persons who are interested in and have been engaged to undertake the trapping of some of these monkeys. In fact, it was only a day or two ago that I signed an agreement and for the permanent secretary to establish a contract with a particular individual who had been very adept at bringing 50, 60 monkeys under control over the last year or so. And we have engaged him in a way that he can at least increase the number of monkeys that he can help us to reduce the population that we have. But there are others who have become engaged in the program, and I can assure you, if the young man who was doing it before continues to be as vigilant as he was, and the others are now on board, that we could have an impact on the size of the monkey population in St. Kitts and Nevis. Would you be in a position to introduce a SIMACO to facilitate marketing of food? Well, COVID-19 has brought to the fore a number of issues that everyone we have to discuss and determine the way forward. I do not know the financial well-being of SIMACO when it went out of business. I can't refer to that particular business model. But certainly wherever business models can be established to assist with the marketing of food, it would be a good thing. And I did say earlier in my presentation that if we produce more, the more we produce, some of the goods that we produce have a shelf life. And the shelf life will help to help them to last during periods where they're not being produced, because you do not produce all foods all year round. On the other hand, we will have to look at adopting those products to another level to preserve them. Maybe we have to look at some agro-processing of some of these foods into certain types of down-market products, which will then preserve them for a longer time. I think you also asked a question, someone asked a question, suppose we have surplus of food on the island. Well, the OECS ministers of government have been having discussions on this over the last couple of weeks. And as we speak, I do have what is a regional product, which is a cabinet submission to take to cabinet. Essentially, OECS ministers of government are looking at how do we maximize, how do we use the opportunity to be able to trade, to have goods being traded among all of our countries without certain taxes and protocols in place. So that cabinet submission will go to cabinet. I would not want to comment more on it until we have had a cabinet look at it. But perhaps I should say, it is looking at port duties and charges which can assist, and of course looking at some of the SPS methodologies that we pay attention to, the phytosanitary measures. And those are things that can help with us being able to trade, send our food to other countries that might not be producing. We are in a position, I believe, however, to improve significantly the production of our food in St. Kitts and Nevis to help some of our neighboring countries. Because there are some countries that cannot produce what we can produce. And this is why I'm encouraging everyone now. And again, I'm saying it in the context that we do not know how long this will last, whether there will be a resurgence, and what will be the state of play in foreign countries preventing food from coming here. It is better for us to produce more, even if we have to find a way somewhere down the road when the Prime Minister looks at the finance, to provide a way to pay farmers for things that we may never eat. Even if we have to do that, it's better to produce more than to have none at all. And then we behave like cannibals. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There was a marijuana question, but I don't think I'll go there now.
Okay.
Maybe the Prime Minister maybe need a whole program for marijuana.
Yes, and we certainly should. What I would say quickly in that, we had always seen marijuana as expanding the opportunities for economic activity in the country and allowing St. Kitts and Nevis to, as it were, create an additional space for our people to become involved in an economic way and in a way that would bring them proper earnings, add to the reputation of St. Kitts and Nevis, because we wanted to focus on medical and scientific marijuana in a large way and ensure ordinary people would be able to participate. We had from the last, I think, budget or thereabout, made determinations. We were going to set up a unit. We already had from Dr. Beard a job description for quote-unquote a marijuana czar, because you needed a project champion, as you will, to put all the places together. We had an expert from Trinidad and Tobago who had worked with the AGRI in terms of fleshing out some of the regulations, etc. So those things are to be done, of course, with all of the drama of the last couple of weeks since January or thereabout with the COVID. Things have not gotten killed, but we still intend to pursue marijuana as industry in St. Kitts and Nevis, job creation, and of course, linking it into our international reputation of adding to health and wellness. Bearing in mind already we have some framework. We do a lot of tests here known to many people into a number of health illnesses and disease, Parkinson's, for example, and reproductive illnesses. All those are conducted by 2 primate facilities here in St. Kitts and Nevis. So we are doing a lot of it, and those facilities really in terms of their contribution to our citizens who have an interest in science are doing a very good job. Indeed, several of our own people have had scholarships from those entities and gone abroad and enhanced themselves and are able to contribute. So it is still in the works, and we will have a conversation and this in the context of the forward movement of St. Kitts and Nevis and our overall plan to create an economy that is stronger, safer, and better for every citizen and resident. The question as to the plans for the CBI, that is something already under action. Indeed, very early, Mr. Lescan had developed, and his staff, a proposal which had come. And at that moment in time, we said, let's wait a bit, see how things will pan out. We don't want to look like we are being opportunistic in the context of a pandemic, so let's hold. We were mindful of the fact that when we had the foresight to introduce the hurricane relief funds, there were some persons who were so unpatriotic that they did not even give the program a chance. One particular individual, well known, went to Dubai, undermined the program, said it was illegal. I am going to revoke all the passports given to those people who have received passports as a result of their investment in the hurricane relief program. And when they had come after the night, we recognized that the person had divided loyalty, had allegiance to Dominica, and was therefore undermining our CBI program to give advantage to Dominica and increase his commission as a result of that. So we have learned from that. That program was a resounding success because it was well conceptualized, well implemented, and we put a lot of hard work in it. We certainly will do the same with respect to this CBI program because we have worked hard over the last 5 years to restore confidence that had been lost. And people forget what we inherited. We inherited a program, CBI then, that by 2014 had lost support internationally. It had been resulted in a FinCEN advisory, that is U.S. Treasury Department, sent out an advisory warning the financial community to be aware of the program because, as it were, they could not trust the administration of the day. It resulted some 5 months after, in November 2014, of the Canadian government revoking the visa-free access which Kittitians and Nevisians had enjoyed hitherto. And so there was a collapse of confidence in the program. It took us a lot of work to get where we now are, a trusted partner with the U.S. government with respect to this. And yes, in a program like that, there's always the ups and downs in some cases, but we have a good confidence and an excellent working relationship. One of the things we have said to all the interested parties, come look at our systems and control. And if there are weaknesses, we are prepared to work to correct them. And so we have been upfront and open with respect to that. We have restored integrity. We have to continue to work upon it. And so the CBI will feature in our plan for the future of St. Kitts and Nevis. And just Friday, the financial secretary, and I spoke about our recent meeting just yesterday, we mentioned that there was a need to have this meeting with the stakeholders of the CBI to refine the proposal that we will take forward for a short-term period, to use the words of the moderator, to assist us in our fight against this pandemic. The matter of the vulnerability index that Mia Motley spoke to on CNN, it's one that has been around for almost 30 years. It is a message that we have not yet had enough resonance, have not received enough resonance in the financial institutions, the Bretton Woods institutions, in particular the IMF and the World Bank, and other agencies that are interested in graduating countries based on the share per capita income only. The vulnerability index is saying use a broader measure, not just one indicator, but several indicators that reflect more genuinely where a country is as a basis for graduation. And graduation in this case is not with gowns and caps, but saying you are no longer eligible to get low-cost financing. You will have to pay close to the market. So St. Kitts and Nevis had been in the fight to get acceptance to this. This is something that we will work with. We have advocated in almost every speech that we have made to the UN that this is critical. What the pandemic and, of course, before that the hurricanes have shown whatever a country has, in the face of a disastrous event, it is never enough. So Dominica was wiped out. If you were to go by the same GDP in terms of the estimate of damages, and we see the slow coming back for that country and others thereafter. What health challenges do to individuals, the pandemic is doing to countries. It takes you off course. A serious cancer ailment take away all of your finances, no matter how big they are. And so we really have to exercise fiscal prudence. So the vulnerability, we have our strong support. We have been in that. The vulnerability, say, take into account the measures of longevity, how long people live, as an indication. Take into account how educated the society is, because these, in the end, are variables that also impact upon development. And we know that the science has said that the tertiary education, and that is why now they have a measure of tertiary education, because the larger the insertion of our citizens in tertiary education, the greater the capacity for them to help us in nation building. So we are very good at primary education, 100% enrollment. We are relatively okay at secondary, but we need to get higher rates of tertiary engagement in the society, because at that level we get the know-how. So we won't have to importing and bringing in foreign talents to assist us when we face challenges, or even to carry out our normal operations in our health centers, in our banks, etc., etc. So that is critical. The matter of Simacodrine has dealt with, but certainly what is clear in the context of St. Kitts is that we need a better model to be able to get goods to the market. A model that allows the farmers to do what they can do best, produce, but somebody else, whether it's a Simaco-like entity, it is for the experts in agriculture to quickly come up with a model. There needs to be a model that takes the good from the farmers, pay them their money, and somebody take on the job of marketing them, whether here in Anguilla, neighboring islands, or converting them into another product. 2 days ago, as I did my walk to my constituency, went into the neck and crannies, and there was a farmer. The farmer had over, 20 or 33 bags of onions. And, I had to take the phone call. A couple of people say, how can you help? But clearly, that burden has to be shifted to an appropriate entity. So they focus on the production, somebody else, more competent, more able, more agile, deal with the marketing and the storage, etc. So I want to thank the caller for that one. There was a suggestion about how we can end the entitlement mentality. And clearly I would be open to have a conversation on that and to invite those people, because the brand new thinkers, if you will, that we want to develop after COVID-19 must have a people ready and willing to contribute, a people who not just ask that the government gives, but say, this is what I can give to help take my country forward. Ask not what the country can do for you, but ask what you can do for the country. And I think any effort at dealing with the entitlement mentality may help us get closer to getting a good answer to that very powerful question that was asked before in the context of nation building. If we do increase the supply, do we tax the foreign fish? I wouldn't say that, but I don't know how Mr. Hamilton would answer. I can't recall. But I think that, again, as we produce more and we have appropriate system of storage, of using into multiplicity of other activities, then the excess can be used in rational and productive ways. And it reminded me that when I left here, went to Trinidad, dasheen and dasheen, the stem, leaves and so on, I never saw them being used as food. You go up to Trinidad, I hear them call them some kind of name, maybe callaloo or some other name. And they are being used, things that we would have thrown away. They are being utilized elsewhere. And so that gives a reminder that we could go further along the production chain in many of these things. So it's not just fresh fish. The fish that we get here is stored. And it comes in many forms, and you could do different things from that, and we need to expand the chain in that regard. I just want to acknowledge the helpfulness of the persons involved in the bus business, and to say, yes, I have heard the minister speak to some proposals that have come. They have not yet arrived to the cabinet. When they come, we will give them a fair look with respect to the way forward. While we are on it, we are urging the bus operators not to receive any passenger who does not wear a mask. These things that are being prescribed and recommended are carefully thought out and are intended to save lives. Even if they do not have a mask made from Sun Island or Lynette Bonaparte or Faustina Wilson from Molyneux, or the Lady Hamilton in Mansion, or wherever they are, at least cover your nose and your mouth when you are going to enter into public transport. That is critical. You are protecting your health and you are protecting our health. We want everyone basically to do this. Mortgage payments, someone asked, the answer is the ministers of finance, who are the membership of the Monetary Council, had persuaded the ECCB to have financial or commercial banks introduce a 6-month moratorium on their payments. And this is still in vogue. I should say that Royal Bank has advised me that they have made it automatically available to all borrowers on record. Some have declined it, some have not. The other banks, I understand, is saying, well, if you want it, you ask for it, we will deal with it on a case-by-case basis. We wish everyone was in a position to just blankly give it, but not every financial institution is at the same place. Some have reserved externally because they are branch of other and more, larger entities. With respect to the PAP and Social Security payouts, Social Security payout in the context of our stimulus package, those payouts are being made every day. So if you don't get Friday, perhaps Monday, Tuesday, they should be in the mail. I had asked that they have a hotline, I'm not sure if it's in place, so that persons can call to get an update. When we would have finished, I would speak to the senior minister regarding that, so persons know where their claims are. What we do know is that I think last Friday, the Social Security had possessed over and paid out for 2,000 claims. $2 million had been made ready to beneficiaries or applicants under the scheme. I want to thank, I think, John Paul. John Paul had some wisdom. How do you reconcile that persons taking a conscious effort not to contribute to Social Security, and now they want to be the first in the line to be able to withdraw from this scheme? I understand that, but I also understand that we are in a time of great uncertainty and great difficulty and turmoil all over the world, and a heart of compassion must come into play. And so what I hope is that those who may benefit, and we may yet devise a scheme that allows them to benefit, they learn from this experience. Those things that are there, like the self-employed program of the Social Security, are intended to protect you. To protect you if you were to get sick. To protect you in the case of some adversity, because that is a basic principle behind Social Security. Some adversity will happen in our lives, some difficulty, sometimes a sickness, sometimes injury on the job, sometimes for others, the female, it will be maternity. For others, regrettably, but it will be death, and that then their beneficiaries will have some assistance. So support this scheme going forward and learn from this particular lesson. But I hope that the Social Security will find some way of giving some measure of support, because this must be a shared sacrifice for all of us. He advises well that we should try to stretch the money like a rubber band. I hope a very strong, resilient rubber band, because we really don't know how long this pandemic will be with us, or some remnants of it. And so I am encouraged by that. I was asked CBI revenue impact assessment. Clearly we are looking at that. And every aspect of life really has been impacted negatively. Financial services will be. CBI programs will be. Because in the context of this, who is out there doing the marketing? Who is there traveling? Who is there thinking about these things when there are more pressing imperatives, if you will, happening in their lives? So, yes, this is going to be impacted, and we are, in a regular way, both myself and the financial team, involved with players in the market. As of the moment, there is still some sense of optimism with respect to it, but you know, we have to put things into perspectives. It's just like I hear people say American will come, and I have to think it through and say, well, when will America open up? That's the first point of it, because that is where the bulk of our visitors come. And who will want to come as soon as America opens up, having regard to what we have gone through collectively as a world. And all these tend to temper and bring a greater sense to realism as to what this opening up and some of these things mean. Grenada is actively promoting their plan. One thing we know that St. Kitts and Nevis has is a brand name, the oldest and the best and the most reliable. We have revised it since we got there to provide a 24-hour update in terms of application. No other persons have that. We have introduced innovations where you can get an expedited processing without loss of the due diligence, because that applies everywhere. And those things people were prepared to pay an extra for to get it, just as people can pay more and get an emergency passport, but all the basic requirements still apply, your police record, etc., etc. So that is something in the works. Are we prepared to have a bipartisan involvement in looking at the forward trend for tourism? I would say beyond that, and more than that, we are interested in an all-of-society approach. I think we want to get out of these dovetailing people into political umbrellas. So depending on your color, you come because it's a party thing. No, we want this to start from the conception that this is a national building effort, nation building. And in nation building, the color mustn't matter. We want everyone who is able to contribute to come and to render assistance and support in a structured way. And this is what we will advise. This is what has worked for us. You see, at the NEOC, the chamber is there, the church is there, the NGO is there. You see, individual donors are there. We are not concerned with their politics. We are concerned with their contribution. And so in the context of tourism or CBI, we are not looking for political intervention. We are looking for intervention from the broader plane of nation building and what people can contribute in the context of where they see the program can go. We are inviting them to come and to help us build a stronger and safer St. Kitts and Nevis. I think I may have answered all of the questions. If not, on another occasion, or the moderator may help me overcome those that I have forgotten, but I'm prepared to come again and be better advised on some of them.
Thank you very much, panelists and Prime Minister. I think you've addressed all the questions that were asked. If there are some that you have not addressed, I think we will invite you back. I'm sure you'll be willing to come because you have definitely made the rounds within the last few months. And I think that's important for people to note that there are not many countries in this world that people can call into a program and speak to the Prime Minister. I've always admired St. Kitts about that. We allow people to speak truth to power, no matter what their political affiliation. And I also agree it should be an all-inclusive approach. This is a hopefully once-in-a-lifetime situation, and the politics must fall to one side. Our motto is country above self. And I think that is very important at this time when we need everybody on deck. So with that said, I would like to thank each of the panelists, the Honorable Prime Minister, the Honorable Minister of Health and Minister of Agriculture, and Mrs. Blake for coming today. I think it was a very informative program. I think we had some very good questions from the callers, and I think we all learned a lot, and that is the goal of the program. I wish everyone a happy curfew Saturday afternoon, and I will allow the panelists to say their goodbyes.
Yes, starting with Michele.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Gath, and thank you very much for having us here. As I said before, mental health is a cross-cutting issue, and we want to be able to bring it into mainstream discussion. And certainly this is an opportunity for us to reset and again look at just the health, the overall health of all of our citizens. So thanks very much.
Thank you. I just want to repeat for posterity that every individual in this country must at this time tighten his belt, must exercise thrift in all of your affairs. We do have habits of spending every dime for which we work, buying things we really don't need. Sometimes we're doing it just to impress other people. And the truth is, the people we try to impress don't really like us. So I'm saying exercise thrift. Put aside something for a rainy day. Learn the lessons which have been transcribed in the Bible. We must be thrifty when the going is good. Someday, the going will be bad. The government has done that. It is why we have been able to afford a stimulus package in the first instance of $120 million. Nowhere else in the region has come close. Barbados, I think I heard, was only 20. And when you think of little St. Kitts and Nevis, after the position we were in a few years ago, second in the world in debt, it is testimony of the management capability of the Minister of Finance, Prime Minister. I want to also say to those persons out there who are worried about the monkeys that we are doing what we can. And I want to thank the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance for increasing the budget for 2020 for dealing with the monkeys. I appreciate WinFM having me on this program today. I hope that those persons who listen have learned something new. I too have learned some things by listening to some of the questions that persons have asked. And I trust that in the coming days and weeks, I'll be able to share more information with those who are thinking positively about their country. I am not looking for persons who just want to be malicious. I'm looking for positive, important recommendations that would enhance the quality of life of individuals. We set about to ensure that the greatest good is done for the greatest number of persons, especially when it comes to those who are less fortunate than ourselves. We are called upon to be more compassionate, and we are putting every foot, both right and left foot forward, to ensure that the people who need our compassion gets that compassion from those of us who are put in position to govern. It must come from within us. We operate better when we are empathetic, when we are, when we then understand that we must be more cordial to people. We operate better when we are compassionate. We must understand that the minute we begin to be partisan and critical and so on, the worst comes out of us. So I'm calling on our people to be positive, and let us move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the two esteemed panelists for being here and to say how I feel personally favored to have had our psychologist to come out on a lockdown day to share our wisdom. And I would say to you that I saw snippets of her presentation at another forum, and I was impressed, and I thought the kind of real talk she was doing then the country ought to hear from an impartial person, because sometimes, again, a political phase, things get caught in that cycle, and the message was more powerful. And for me, it's really, how do we build the nation? So I want to thank you, Michele, for coming and doing a wonderful job. My colleague, Eugene Hamilton, carries multiple portfolios cutting across, but they are all interrelated, health and agriculture. I was happy to have him come because, again, one of the things the pandemic has taught us, we must never forsake our own capacity and capability to produce goods and services. So it is our food. Then it was our mass. Luckily for us, we had Sun Island ready to respond, and now has been able, perhaps it can grow, to produce 15,000 masks per week. So within 1 month, all of St. Kitts and Nevis could have at least one reusable mask. And we could begin to look at supplying Anguilla, supplying St. Martin, etc., if those opportunities come. And on that note, I want to encourage every employer to give their employee the gift of one mask, one reusable mask, so that they understand the importance of it, and that could be more pervasive in the community. Giving them what may cost $10 to $15 could add 15 more years of productive service to your entity, and with them even be more grateful to you for that special gift you would have given. For me, as the Prime Minister of the country, I understand the historic significance, for I have never contemplated a life in politics until, of course, I got caught in the hang of it, growing up with a father who was a trade unionist, a father who worked on the estate, a father who was actively engaged in reading, and the political leadership of the day got close to. And lots of things were happening in the household. He was a man who served, delivered 33 children, of which we know. So it was a large family, and all the ups and downs, the happiness and the sorrows of that have come to the fore. But I've never contemplated it. But I have been very grateful for the people of constituency 7, Bellevue to Atlas, and the people of the country who have given me an opportunity to serve. And even more so, grateful to the country of large, because in 2015 they gave me the opportunity to lead this country that I love with all my heart and mind for such a time like this. Clearly, when we started, we never contemplated the worst. Maybe we should have. We never contemplated we will have the wrath of hurricanes back to back. And worse yet, none of us contemplated we will be dealing with a pandemic. But it is. God ordained leaders, and He put them in place for a purpose. There has been many sleepless nights, as I attempt to work and to sort out my own thoughts so that I could bring clarity of leadership to the country and to the cabinet at this particular moment where decisive decisions have to be made, and not at all times popular decisions can be made. I want to say thank you to the cabinet and to all the people who have given their advice, their support, and to remember kindly those who tell me every day, Dr. Harris, we are praying for you. We know your load is heavy, and they send me a text or a little thought. All of those things have helped. My desire is to take St. Kitts and Nevis safely to another place. And if I may use another biblical analogy for what it is worth, crossing the Red Sea to a better place, the Canaan land. We must see this moment of difficulty as an opportunity. And as Michele used the terminology of reframing, for some it is whether the glass is half full or half empty. And if it is half full, you take a more positive look of it. If it's half empty, you are more negative. And the actions that follow are going to reflect that kind of mind frame. So I want our people to be positive. This is an opportunity for us. We are struggling, yes, but this is an opportunity for us to make a brand new history. Let's suppose that St. Kitts and Nevis become the first country to effectively defeat COVID-19. We would have created a brand new history for St. Kitts and Nevis, using our own creativity, our own discipline, our own ingenuity to develop something of which not only us but the generation after us can be proud. For us to do that, it has to be an all of society approach. And in such times, always in the life of every great nation, opportunities and challenges come, and they always come together. And it is which part do you take? Which part you take to redeem the future, recognizing that we would have fallen short in some of our deliberations, but now we have a chance to pick up the pieces and to go towards the mountaintop. I want to encourage every boy and girl and every citizen and resident in St. Kitts and Nevis. Let us work together at this time to rebuild our country and take it to the promised future, stronger and safer for all of us and the generations that will come behind. And to all who are in the forefront of this war against COVID-19, and we like to say the front line, but there are people in the middle lines and there are people in the back lines, like those who get up and go and ensure that our step workers, 3,000 plus of them, can get their paycheck. Those who ensure that the established and non-establishment workers get their check. Those in the banks who do not get to go in the supermarkets, where now we have 4 days they can. But all of those people are doing a fantastic job to help take the country through. That should be our focus at this particular moment in time. And we will have adequate time to deal with all the other things that will develop in the normal life of the country. So thank you, St. Kitts and Nevis, and keep me in your praise. I will continue to do my endeavor best, to do the best that I can for my country and people. Thank you very much to Win FM, and thank you to Mr. Wilkin for being an effective moderator, brought difficult questions online and offline. But thank you for being part of this program and this exercise of getting St. Kitts back to work. Thank you. May God bless you all.
Prime Minister, just before we leave, I just want to ask one question of you. Can you publicly declare myself and Mrs. Blake essential workers so that we can get home without being arrested?
I publicly declare that Mr. Blake, Mr. Wilkin and Miss Blake must get home safely without being arrested.
Thank you, Prime Minister. On that note, everyone have a good afternoon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.